Hey, Jim.
Where you guys been? Sorry about that.
Okay, give me 1 minute. You guys are in.
Do I have enough light in my office? Yeah,
You're okay. You're a little
I
dim,
can-
but you're
I
okay.
can add.
I
He
would
just
add.
call you dim.
She did, yeah.
I said his light was dim.
Oh, I didn't
No,
hear
I
that
didn't hear
part.
that.
It's not exactly what you said.
All right. Give me 1 second and we're getting ready to go live. All set.
Thank you. It is 5:06. I would like to call this evening's meeting of the Town of Sutton Select Board to order. Before we get started, I'd like to read you our remote meeting guidelines based on Governor Baker's order. Good evening. This open meeting of the Town of Sutton Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. The governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Select Board is convening via Zoom app is posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Next item on our agenda, item number 2, is public forum, limited to 5 minutes per topic. Discussion or comments about town employees or agency members shall be avoided so as not to violate individuals' rights. Do we have anyone this evening for public forum? There appearing to be none, we will move on to the next item agenda, and that would be the Select Board minutes of our abbreviated meeting from August 4th, 2020, which ended unexpectedly and very early due to the hurricane storm that evening.
Madam Chairwoman, I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes from August 4th, 2020 as read.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
That matter passes unanimously. Next, we'll move to our recognitions. This evening, we have some recognitions of 2 very capable Eagle Scouts that have done some wonderful projects here in town. And perhaps if Jesse, you could give us a little bit of background on these 2 individuals.
Sure, I'd love to. And as a matter of fact, I went into their swearing-in ceremony Sunday night up at Waters Farm. So it was a very fun event, even though it was raining and a bit wet. As all the scouts were laughing, it wouldn't be an event at Waters without it raining. These 2 young men are spectacular. If memory serves me correctly, John Warren earned 33 merit badges, and Hayden earned 48. John Warren is a project worked down in Wilkes with Jim Renaud and the Cemetery Commission, and they worked on cleaning up the cemetery and writing a couple of headstones and identifying the graves of some veterans that kind of fell out of the recorded record. Hayden, his project was more aimed at community service. He made a life jacket stand. He made some cornhole boards in order to liven up, I guess you could say, parts of the Blackstone Valley corridor. Both young men were phenomenal, and it was an honor and privilege to attend and represent the board.
All right, fantastic. Jim, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I agree completely with what Jesse had to say.
Okay, well, we do have some official recognition that we would need read into the record. Jesse, if you would be so kind as to do that.
Oh, okay. I see how it goes. Sure. I'd love
I,
to. It would
I
be an,
snuck up on you. Sorry about
it
that.
would be an honor to serve as clerk once again. All right. Town of Sutton, Massachusetts Certificate of Recognition. In grateful acknowledgement of many years of faithful service to the Boy Scouts of America, Troop 131 in the town of Sutton, it is hereby resolved in formal session by the Sutton Select Board that this certificate of recognition is awarded to John Michael Warren for attaining the rank of Eagle Scout. Whereas John Warren, as a member of Scout Troop 131, has given generously his time and effort and has served in a dignified, faithful, and scout-like manner. And whereas John Warren worked with the Sutton Cemetery Commission, the Dudley Gender and American Legion, and the Sutton Historical Society at the Wilkinsonville Cemetery, cleaning up 250 plus cemetery stones, along with fallen debris and branches. Including in this project was marking out the maps, marking out on maps the outline of the cemetery, along with significant information of those buried at this location. And whereas John Warren has set a model of commitment and dedication for all scouts to follow, now therefore be it further resolved that the Sutton Select Board, on behalf of all residents of Sutton, commend and congratulate John on this most prestigious achievement. The Select Board are proud to wish John well in all future endeavors. In witness thereof, the Sutton Select Board has caused this certificate to be read into record this 18th day of August in the year 2020. And for Hayden's, in grateful acknowledgement of many years of faithful service to the Boy Scouts of America, Troop 131, in the town of Sutton, it is hereby get a recognition Hayden John Page for obtaining the rank of Eagle Scout. Whereas Hayden Page, as a member of Sutton Scout Troop 131, has given generously his time and effort and has served in a dignified, faithful, and scout-like manner. And whereas Hayden Page oversaw a project of building bird and bat houses and a new life jacket loaner station for West Hill Dam in Uxbridge, and whereas Hayden Page has set a model of commitment and dedication for all scouts to follow, now therefore be it further resolved that the Sutton Select Board, on behalf of all residents of Sutton, commend and congratulate Hayden on this most prestigious achievement. The Select Board are proud to wish Hayden well in all future endeavors. In witness thereof, the Sutton Select Board has caused the certificate to be read into the record this 18th day of August in the year 2020.
Do we have any further comment from anyone on the board with regard to that? David, if we could start with you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Over the course of my time on the board, we've had opportunity to have many Eagle Scouts come before us. And it seems to me like we generate, I don't know, a significant number of candidates for this. I'm not familiar with what happens in other towns, but it seems like we did well. And it's always interesting to me to sort of see the breadth of the projects that they do to become Eagle Scouts, and these are no different. They're just interesting projects, things maybe would never have this idea, but they really add to the character and the benefit of the town and the region. And it's a lot of hard work to get here. So I just like to extend my congratulations, and also thank you to Jesse for representing the board and going out and being there for their in-person recognition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Jesse, any further comments to add to your prior comments this evening?
Yeah, I'd just like to add to it just the recognition also of the families, Brenda and Robert Page, along with Mark and Christine Warren. That's one of the things that's often overlooked, is the fact that in order for a young man to rise through the ranks and achieve Eagle Scout is how many hours in dedication that the family has to put into this process as well. So I'd just like to once again congratulate the parents as well.
Thank you so much, Jesse. And Jonathan, how about yourself this evening?
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to acknowledge both John and Hayden for their commitment to the Scouts and to the community, and how important it is that, through this process of becoming an Eagle Scout, that they learn how important it is to give to your community. And and give back. And so I think this is a great starter, and hopefully someday they'll run for select person or some kind of role like that. So, but I think it's really important development for our youth, and just want to congratulate them on their hard work and thank their families for supporting them.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Jeffrey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd also like just to extend my congratulations to both Hayden and John. I think one of the unfortunate things of where we're at today is we don't get to see them in person come before us, which is too bad, because this is really it's a big deal. It's a big accomplishment. It's a very select group of people that actually attain this this level of scouting, and it's something that they should be proud of. It's something they should carry with them throughout their life. And so it is a big deal. It's a lot of work, and I congratulate both of them and wish them.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I mean, my comments are fairly limited, but I'm always astounded at the ingenuity that these scouts come up with for these projects. It always seems like it's a project that you think, that was a great idea. Why didn't somebody think of that previously? So I am overwhelmed by the numbers of badges that they've both received. That's really quite incredible. So just congratulations to both of them, and they're serving our town well. So that's my final comment for this evening on that. Any further discussion on that matter? No, there being none, we will move on to a public hearing on the transfer of the center store liquor license and new common vic. Jim, did you just want to give us a little bit of background before we turn it over to Mr. Porter?
I think you want to open the public hearing and then
Oh,
go from
yes,
there.
I do. And I did
Maybe the clerk can read the.
I can read it for you.
Yeah, I have it right here. And yeah, Mr. Clerk, Jonathan, if you would be willing to read that, I would appreciate it.
All right, so notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of Mass General Law that a public hearing will be held on August 18th, 2020 at 5 p.m. on request of Shangru LLC, Manager of Record Ganesh Bora, DBA Sutton Center Country Store, for a transfer of 15 wine, Section 15 wine malt package store liquor license number 00022-PK-1254 to include a pledge of inventory and pledge of license located at 3 Singletary Ave, map 16, parcel 55, to Shri Variety One LLC, proposed manager of record, Pinkesh Patel. This will be a virtual meeting in accordance with orders issued by the governor during the current state of emergency. There'll be no in-person attendance by the public. Persons may attend and participate in the hearing by using the online Zoom application at https://zoom.us/join or via phone at 1-929-205-6099, meeting ID 893-4922-9622, password 0019444. You may also provide input by emailing djakes@town.sutton.ma.us or U.S. mail to Sutton Select Board, 4 Oxford Road, Sutton, Mass. 01590.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Now, Jim, if you'd like to speak to the license transfer, and then we can turn the floor over to the interested parties who are in attendance.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a motion to authorize the transfer or sale of the center store from Ganesh Bora to Pinkesh Patel. Pinkesh Patel currently owns and runs the Crossroads Variety down in Manchog, and would like to acquire the Sutton Center store. The vote tonight will be pending upon the Board of Health that they go out to permits and inspections of what they intend to do. But it is, the big part of this is the transfer of the wine and malt liquor store, the acceptance of inventory, and the common vic that goes along with it.
Okay, and I guess, Mr. Porter, did you have any comments to add? Oh, I don't think your volume is on, your audio.
There we go.
Yeah,
Good.
thank you.
Yeah, so I could just give a brief introduction. I think that was fairly to the point. But my name is Matthew Porter. I represent Shriji Variety One LLC. Along with me at the hearing tonight is Pinkesh Patel. Mr. Patel is the manager of the LLC. He would also be the proposed license manager for the beer and wine license. So fairly straightforward transfer. It is the sale of the business. Along with that comes the license transfer that's before the board. Mr. Patel has worked in the retail industry for over a decade. He does own a liquor store in Worcester, and so certainly understands the responsibilities that come along with the sale of alcohol. He has probably be most known in town for operating Crossroads Variety. One point of clarification, he does not have an ownership interest in that store. He's been managing that location, and this would be a new purchase for him and the ability to own his own store in town. So no major anticipated changes to the store whatsoever. Very experienced operators. There is a pledge of the license to Rockland Trust, who is financing the transaction for Mr. Patel. But other than that, their lease has already been approved. Their financing is in order, and certainly I'm here to answer any questions that the board may have, and Mr. Patel here is here as well.
And Mr. Patel, did you want to make any statement before I turn it over to the board for their questions?
No.
No. Okay. And I see we also have Ms. Krumsick here, who's the manager of the Sutton Center store. So I'm sure the three of you will be available to answer any questions. David, if we could start with you, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. This is really not a whole lot of questions, given that Mr. Patel has experience in the town of Sutton, is familiar with our rules. It sounds to me like you're going to keep the same manager and operations within the store itself.
Yeah.
So, everybody that's there is already, again, familiar with operations and particularly the sale of alcohol and doing that within the town of Sutton. So, mostly, I guess I wish you good luck with the ownership of the store, and I really don't see a problem with this. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, David. Jesse. Jesse, you're muted.
Mute.
Look at
There
that.
you
I'm using new technology and I forget how to use it. Well played. All right. Mr. Patel, thank you for coming in. Mr. Porter, Mary, great seeing you all. Thank you. I do have a couple of quick questions. Nothing too big, I guess. Mr. Patel, how much time do you estimate you'll spend physically present at the center store?
5 to 5 hours.
So you'll be primarily working at the center store as opposed to your other location in Worcester?
No, I am not working in a Sutton Center store. Maybe I start the work in Sutton Center store now.
Okay, so operational from that
Yeah.
standpoint, it would still be under Mary's management, and
Yeah,
I'm assuming the same team will still be in place?
yeah, I keep the same people and everything.
Okay, Mary, I'm going to throw this question out to you, even though I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is. I figure I might as well ask. I'm assuming that all the staff who would be at the cash register are already tip certified?
Mary, you're muted. Mary, can you unmute? Can you hear me?
Okay, I unmuted. Yes, they all are. We all are tip certified.
Okay, so I'm assuming, again, just from that point of sale perspective, there won't be any significant changes or anything like that?
No.
Okay, excellent. See, again, easy questions. The last one that I have is for Jim. Have you heard any concerns from Chief Toll about this transaction?
No, the chief has signed off on it. The last violation that on the Crossroads was many years ago. So there's really nothing current under our alcohol policy that the board has adopted. So the chief has signed off on it.
Okay, perfect. Well, those would be my only concerns. So that's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Jesse. Jonathan?
I really don't have much. I just want to welcome Mr. Patel as an owner in town rather than just managing the store. I want to wish him well, and this is pretty straightforward, and I think my colleagues have really addressed the questions I had. So I'm all set. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jeffrey?
Just a couple of questions, Madam Chair. Mr. Patel, with regard to the liquor store that you own in Worcester, have there been any recent any violations at the store?
No.
None? Great. Have there been any violations at the, and Mary, maybe this you can help me out with this. Have there been any violations at the center store?
No.
There was one way long before, right when I started, so 6 years ago.
Okay.
But since then, no.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Just a couple of quick comments. The application obviously looks complete and fine. I'd just like to welcome you, Mr. Patel, as a business owner and tell you that you are purchasing an establishment with a fantastic crew. So you should consider yourself lucky. Mary runs a tight ship over there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that is my last statement for the evening. We do need to vote to close the public hearing. So if we could just take a roll call vote. David?
David Hall, aye.
Jesse Lemanik, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
Jeff Bannon, aye.
Wendy Mead, aye. So the public hearing has been closed. Do we have any further questions or discussions on the transfer of the license? If not, we could entertain a motion.
Madam Chairwoman, I'd like to make a motion to approve contingent on all required Board of Health permits and licenses, the transfer of a Section 15 wine and malt package store liquor license, pledge of inventory, and pledge of license number 00022PK1254 from Ganesh Bora, DBA Sutton Center Country Store, to Pikesh Patel, DBA Sutton Center Country Store, manager of record, Pinkish Patel, located at 3 Singletary Ave, Sutton, Mass., and a new common victular license for Sutton Center Country Store under new owner Pinkish Patel, manager of record Pinkish Patel, with an expiration date of December 31st, 2020.
Second?
There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 That matter passes unanimously. Mr. Patel, thank you so very much for joining us, and Mr. Porter and Mary as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Item number 3 on the agenda. Superintendent Friend is here from the Sutton School System, and we would like to address the reopening plan for this fall. Doesn't come as a surprise to anyone. This is a much talked about matter in the community. So Jim, I didn't know if you wanted to make a statement before I introduce Mr. Friend.
No, I'll just say that I think Paul Brennan's also here, and
Yes, he
Mr.
is.
Brennan is the chair of the school committee, and this is a school committee decision, but you know, the board would like to hear from Mr. Friend, and you know, I invited him, and he was willing to come in and give you an update on the plans for the fall.
So Ted, we'll turn it over to you if you'd just be kind enough to give us a little background on the matter and the current policy going forward.
Sure. So the state sent out guidelines, very inefficient guidelines on June 25th, in which to make plans. We had to do an initial plan for July 31st, and then we had to submit our final plan on August 10th. Through the process, we obviously had committees at every school, we had stakeholder groups, and the plan that we submitted had to have 3 components: an all-in plan to bring all students back, a hybrid model, or a full remote model. And so that's what we submitted on August 10th. Obviously, all districts across the Commonwealth are struggling mightily with trying to come up with the best solution possible for their students and their communities. And if you look at all of the different plans, Uh, Obviously, I'm sure you're all aware that on Monday night, the school committee voted 5-0 in favor of a hybrid model. I went the next day, we had a standing administrative meeting with all the administrators, the unions, and the public health nurse, Cheryl Rowinski, and Michelle Donovan, our school nurse. And we did our normal exercise of sitting down and dealing with issue after issue after issue and trying to find solutions. And it was then where I finally just said, this just makes no sense. And, time will tell whether that was a good decision or not. Although I don't know. I don't know if you can look at this situation in a pandemic that we haven't seen the likes of since 1918. Obviously, that was much worse. I don't think there are any really great solutions to this issue of trying to bring students back into school. What will happen is we'll bring the students back for 2 weeks. We want them to meet their teachers. And those 2 weeks will give us some real good data to judge how hybrid will work. So we'll be able to check attendance. We'll have students going through what it'll be like to be in school during a pandemic and with the guidelines. What I would say is what's going to happen for our students is they will be in basically a lockdown mode every single day, and their movements around the school will be greatly restricted. We will have no more than 12 to 14 students in any one classroom at any one time. All students will be 6 feet apart at all times in the classroom. I think we have to be realistic that we don't want to become police officers and wardens of and turning it into a prison, but we're going to do our best to keep students 6 feet apart. After the first 2 weeks, we'll go into full remote, except for in grades pre-K, K, and 1, where obviously it's very difficult to teach students how to read and write remotely. So we're going to do that. Special needs students, many special needs students will be coming to school 4 full days a week and some for half days to meet our requirements on IEPs. After those 2 weeks go by, then we'll have a lot of data on how the remote worked. We'll do surveys with parents, and then we'll see what's happened in other communities over that month period of time. We'll take all that data and then analyze, do we continue the path in the remote model? Do we readjust? Do we make changes? One of the things that I am concerned about is this whole color system. The red, yellow, green, white system. I worry that as we get into the fall and the winter and the spring, that that system would mean schools would be going in and out of different systems. So anyway, that's pretty much kind of where we are. We did have a 2.5-hour school committee meeting on Monday, an approximately 3-hour school committee meeting on Thursday. And we pretty much flushed out all of the arguments at that time. And again, I'll answer any of your specific questions.
We'll take a look at the board and see what questions we have. David.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Ted and Paul, thank you for stopping by tonight. I know you haven't had much of a chance to talk about this, so here's your opportunity. That's a joke.
Say sarcasm.
I've talked with many folks about this, and in fact, I was reading an article in some national news publication recently that said exactly the same thing. I think we've left you with the least enviable job in town, and maybe for many years, the least enviable job. This is a I think, Ted, you said it, somebody said it in your meeting the other night, right? You cannot make everybody happy here. That the the two poles of opinions on this are, the strongly held beliefs, and I think it's going to be really difficult to convince people from one side to come over to the other. Personally, this discussion for me tonight got easier when you decided to go all remote, essentially, because I have to say, for what it's worth, that's how I feel about it. I think you got it right. Yeah, at some point you have to have a true north, and I certainly understand the concerns that people have around getting their kids back in school. It is important. We need to have our kids in school, but at the same time, safety of our students, safety of teachers, safety of the administrators, ultimately safety of parents. This is a community-wide problem. Safety, in my view, has to come first. I'm just one opinion. This is not our board's decision in any way, but they gave me a microphone, so here I am. I would also like to say this. I think you probably, Ted, would like to have maybe that 24-hour period back, perhaps. But from my perspective, to have come to a realization the day after having that school committee meeting that it wasn't the right thing to do, and then to come out publicly and change your mind is not something everybody would do. And so I commend you for for your willingness to sort of take the heat and take a different approach when that's the way that you saw it. I recognize that today in the Commonwealth, we have a fairly low transmission rate, right? But we have had an uptick in cases in Sutton. As you mentioned, we're now a yellow town. And if you look at, in my opinion, I think that there's been, it seems like there's been a shift, and that more and more people are coming to the same conclusion. And if you look at the places around the country where they have actually gone back to school at this point, whether that's in middle and high schools or colleges, the incidence of infection is, that they've really had a serious problem with it. So, again, that's just my point of view. I think safety, from my perspective, is the true north. And I think this decision kind of goes in that direction. So, I'm personally happy to see that. I thought it was interesting, though, your point of view had less, although you went to this model, you said it's not really about the virus. It's more about, I think you said, logistics.
Yes.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, at every turn, there are guidelines. So we're setting up the high school gymnasium with student desks that are 6 feet apart. We're putting 150 of them in the high school gymnasium so that we have 3 different sets of high school students having lunch. And we're doing it in such a way so they never share the same lunch table when they eat lunch. We do that with everything. We changed every schedule to minimize cross-contamination. At the meeting the other night, there are parents that think that students should be cleaning the desks in between classes. And then there are other people who think, I don't want to take that risk of, having a student clean the desk for either themselves or another student. And though there are hundreds of those examples that we look at every single day, and we have 2 3-hour meetings, and at the end of the meeting we just say we don't check off many items off the list because we don't have good answers to the items that come up. And that happens week after week after week. And we're going to be putting out to parents this week what the guidelines are when someone gets sick in a classroom, if they have COVID-19. And I just worry that our attendance will drop when parents are getting notices going home that said, there was a child sick in your classroom. We don't know if it's COVID-19 or not. We just want to make you aware of it. And then we're putting parents in a position where they have to say, do I send my child to school now? We don't know. It's probably nothing. And I know that, 90% of parents in the middle and high school want their kids to go back. But when they start getting letters like that, I don't know what'll happen to attendance. So again, I want kids in school. I mean, I think everybody wants kids in school. And I just want, all of you had kids that went through the school. I just want you to imagine what school is going to look like when, even in middle and high school, we have to control how they go to the bathroom. We have to control how they go through the halls. We have to control how they eat lunch. In every classroom, they have to be 6 feet apart, facing forward, period. That's not a school environment that's very appealing to me. And so it's just a combination of so many different things, but we'll find out. We'll know in 2 weeks. We'll get feedback from the kids. Did they like that? Did they not like that? Or the feedback. We'll get feedback in 2 weeks, the full remote. I think one of the things that parents have in their mind was what full remote looked like in the spring. Full remote in the fall will be regular school. Schools start on time. Attendance will be taken. Students will have all of their classes every single day in the full remote model. So I think once parents experience that and they see that the education, although it will not be like being in school, it's going to be regular school going forward. So let's try both models, reassess, take the temperature of where towns around us are, see if any towns ended up going from hybrid to remote, and that'll give us more data to figure out how we handle the rest of the school year.
So when you say reassess, what's your timetable for doing that?
Well, again, like I said in the meeting, we have meetings every Tuesday morning with the key administration, healthcare workers. Obviously, we won't be doing anything. The plan that's set is in action. If we look at the data and towns are able to manage this, there doesn't seem to be a lot of letters going home. And the assessment of the team and the school committee is that, you know what? Let's say that everything points to it makes sense now to go to the hybrid. I'm not saying, but let's say that was the case. You would need at least a couple of additional weeks to line up all of the busing, all of the other things we'll need to operate the school. As you could well imagine, where we're trying to work out agreements with the bus company. Right now they're looking and saying they will not be transporting students in Sutton after the first 2 weeks. Not only that, 65–70% of parents planning on driving their students. So in order for us to even transport those students back in school, if we went hybrid, we need at least 2 weeks to get that up and running. So again, we'll have a metrics in the data that tells us, yeah, it's safe to go back to school. Hopefully schools are able to do that. Hopefully we'll have good examples in the area.
Ted, I think your video is frozen.
In time where we will be on November 1st. I don't know.
Okay, so you cut.
But I don't want to hopscotch back and forth from.
Yeah, I would think that would be a problem. So, you described what what sounds like a little bit of a dystopian kind of environment, the way you sort of saw it playing out initially. Just thinking about the logistics. And I guess that's my question. If the metrics that you're weighing about what happens in other towns, or is it about the feedback you get during that opening 2-week period? And, are you thinking like a month before you start to reassess if the other towns are doing okay, or?
We're going to look at all of that information.
Yeah.
All of it. And we've got to see what happens in our own town. But I know that every town around us has a different plan. Every town around us has a different plan. And so this gives us an opportunity to learn from those plans. Right now, my phone is beeping because 3 superintendents from Blackstone Valley are texting me to talk about what's happening. I know that I know that the group that I chat with every single day, they're all like me. They're none of us are confident right now because of the unknown. We just don't know. So I would say we're going to be in the remote model for the foreseeable future, unless the data tells us that no, it's more than safe to go back to school in the hybrid model.
Great. One last question. I'll turn it over to my colleagues. You mentioned, a stark difference between what the end of the year last year looked like and the start of the year this year. Can you, the concern that I had is that undoubtedly we have some students and families that don't have the technological capabilities to connect. And are you worried about that? Has that been sort of dealt with? Do families and students have the equipment that they need?
So we have several grants that we're using. So first of all, we are purchasing Chromebooks for every student in the district. So that's one really great outcome of COVID-19. So now we have a one-on-one initiative for the entire district. We've also purchased laptops for every teacher in the district. The only problem with both of those situations is there's such a backlog. So some of that equipment will be coming in September, some in October. We do have approximately 400 Chromebooks that we will lend out to families that need those Chromebooks. We did that in the spring, we'll do that in the fall. In one of the grants we wrote, we put in money to provide internet service for any families that do not currently have that service. So we will be able to provide all students with the ability to work remotely from home. We are training all of our teachers, all of our instructional assistants in Zoom. We have 2 days of training in Zoom, Google Classroom, and other platforms. We also have 8 additional days beyond that of professional development before the school day opens. We're also going to provide additional supports for staff that really struggle with technology. If you look at some of you with the gray hair like mine, we were born a little bit before, technology entered the fray. And so, at least in my case, I always feel like I'm, 10 steps behind everybody else with technology. So, any teacher that's struggling will provide additional supports and then additional staffing for those classrooms so that we make sure we do our best to meet every child's individual needs, but also support teachers that are not as comfortable with the technology that we're using.
And so you are confident that the internet access piece will be available by the time the school year gets underway?
We've done a survey. The survey went out this week. Not one family reported that they need internet access. So what we may be doing is using, I want to say we put aside approximately $15,000 to provide an internet service for families that may not need it. We'll probably use that money in a different way from the grant. So based on the survey, but any family that does not have internet service, we will provide that service for them. So 100% of our students will have access to the internet, and if they don't have a device, we will be providing them with a device.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you for coming in tonight, and certainly we all wish you good luck for the start of the school year. So, thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Welcome. Paul, I'd also like to invite you to make any comment or suggestion as we move forward as you see appropriate. So I didn't know if you had any comments on David's questions?
Yes.
Oh, I don't think we can hear you, Paul.
He knows that.
How about now? Is that any better?
Perfect.
Yeah. So I guess
Perfect.
I don't, maybe if I had the hair, it would be gray and I wouldn't have the technology working either. So that's, no, thanks. I mean, I think this is great in terms of communication. I think it's been important to get the word out. So if it's another venue to communicate, that's phenomenal. Ted's been living it every day. So he's really the person for the answers. If I was going to say anything and you asked, I think Ted sort of glosses over the work he's been doing with all of the other departments in town and with Jim. And that's certainly, if you've been here for a while, has been just so pleasant over the last few years, but it's paying back in huge dividends during this event. The way those teams are working together is really, it makes it very easy. And then one last one I will say is, Dave, I think you said it, but or maybe it was Ted. Everybody in every meeting has had a really common goal, and that's been how do you get the kids back in the building safely? The question really has become, how do you measure safety? How do you balance everybody's sort of different levels of risk tolerance? In terms of the details, Ted's got it covered.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
You're all set, David?
Yes,
Jesse?
thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Paul, Ted, thank you for coming. Before I get too far ahead of myself, I want to preface my remarks by saying that a but is coming. And I only mention that because I do have thoughts on this matter. First off, I want to point out to anyone tuning in that unlike any member of the school committee or anyone that's on this board, the select board, I'm actually an educator. And I will be physically returning to the classroom on Monday morning. Granted, I teach at the collegiate level, and I will be dealing with adults, but I am physically entering a contained space 5 days a week to practice my craft. Now, in March, just like our school system, I went full remote, literally with a day's notice. We were on spring break. The word came on a Monday that the following Monday, when the semester began, I essentially had to, for me, figure out how to the equivalent of reinventing the wheel. I got it done, though. And I don't know if it was a success, but I made it work. Second, I don't have a horse in this race. My wife and I decided several years ago to pull our kids out of Sutton schools when they reached high school. Both ended up at BVT, and we've been happy with their experience prior to COVID. My youngest, this is her senior year, and she's going to be experiencing in a couple of weeks their version of a hybrid system. As far as I know, it's a 6-tiered plan with incremental phases allowing for fluid adjustments. When the school year starts, currently as it is now, one entire grade level will be in the building, while 3 grade levels will be doing distance learning. And they're going to rotate at least initially. There is an informational meeting on tonight at 7. So with luck, we'll be wrapped up by then so I can tune in and see what the steps are. But yeah, it's nice to see that there was a lot of thought put into it. Now, granted, I understand I'm not comparing apples to oranges. There are no young kids there. BVT is a high school. There's no pre-K to 8 students. But I know as a parent, it has been nice for the last several weeks, maybe months, knowing that at least we got a ballpark idea of what's going to happen when the school year starts. But that being the case, I was tuning in last week because I was curious as to what would happen. I will admit I did miss Monday night school committee meeting live, but I did tune in on the town's YouTube channel in the morning, and I listened to the entire meeting. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure if I necessarily agreed with everything that was presented, but what I heard was what I thought at the time was a well-reasoned, thought-out plan. Yet, less than an hour or two later, after I switched from YouTube channel back to listening to music, that's when I saw Mr. Friend's email. And obviously the change had come down. Then, of course, I tuned in on Thursday night and I saw, well, what was a marathon, to say the least. Now, that being said, I have 3 primary concerns. I don't know if they're questions, but they're concerns. First, in all of the discussions that I've listened to, I've heard concern, rightfully so, about staff and students. But I don't know how much discussion there has been in terms of the impact on parents. Whether anyone wants to admit it or not, public school for many families is daycare. Both parents in this economy that we're in go to work, and they are not in the house. As if the hybrid model wouldn't have been challenging enough, Now parents have to play the role of a full-time classroom teacher's aide, or in some cases a teacher, in addition to worrying about more pressing things, like making sure the mortgage and car payments are made, or that the lights and the heater kept on, or that there's food in the refrigerator. And if that wasn't enough pressure, I'm hearing from my friends more and more private, as well as many public sector employers, are requiring their employees to go back to work. Now, again, I understand that you guys are making the best decision that you can with the data that's available. But, you know, I'm concerned that there are many parents that have faced a real pressing matter. And I spoke to several over the weekend where they're having to pull their kids out of Sutton, send them to private schools if they can find seats. And I've talked to others that are considering homeschooling. So again, it's not a good situation. Next, I do have to speak a little bit from my personal experience in terms of teaching via distance learning. And I'll tell you the experience, at least as an educator, and from what I heard of my students, again, adult students, was that there were many, many challenges. How many of us as adults can say with all sincerity that, you know, we don't zone out at any point as we're doing our 1 or 2 hour Zoom meetings? Yet now we're asking children, young children in some cases, to spend 3, 4, 5 hours per day, 5 days a week, watching a screen. Again, I'm not saying that it's not going to work. I have doubts. And for me, when I went to distance learning, I remember the conversations that I think maybe Ted and I had back when I was on the school committee over concerns over screen time. And yet now that's the choice that we're going to be looking at. So again, in terms of concerns, what happens if the kiddos start tuning out? You know, I don't know. There's no perfect answer. And lastly, I do want to send a shout out to someone who I felt, you know, really stood up on Thursday's meeting, and that was Bruce Edwards. When he actually had the courage of conviction to admit that what we are dealing with are guidelines. All of these things that are coming down for the state are not laws, they're not rules etched in stone, but they are guidelines. They exist to guide us on the right path. Now, again, from my perspective, the school department has known since at least March, when the 2-week lockdown to flatten the curve was implemented, and in every week that followed, that at some point kids were going to return to the building. And I don't know, from an adult perspective, I just find it very troubling that it seems that in the last couple of weeks we're scrambling. Again, there was a reference to the fact that you're trying to get Chromebooks. I understand it took time for the CARES grant to come in, but I remember, if I recall correctly, on Thursday, there was a reference that some classrooms don't even have webcams at this point. So, you know, it seems that there was time and place to put something that might have worked. Because after all, at the core of all these guidelines are 3 simple rules: wear a mask, wash your hands, and social distance. Now, sadly, I don't know why. And again, I get it. We have 351 municipalities. I know we have less school districts, but you know, there are several hundred school districts, and everyone's scrambling trying to do something that they deem right. But sadly, I'm seeing it more and more when I tune in on the news and listen to social media. I think there's a lot of fear that's present. You know, FDR famously stated in his first inaugural address that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. We all know that, but have we read beyond? Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. My fear is that we as a society have become so risk averse that we are paralyzed when trying to make the tough decisions. Now, Mr. Friend, I give you credit. You said on multiple times on Monday, you said it multiple times on Thursday, and you also said it this evening, that kids belong in the classroom. You have at your fingertips one of the greatest teaching moments of these young kids' lifetimes, in which they can witness firsthand what it takes to do the right thing. Will it take effort to monitor the kids when they go to the bathroom? Will it take efforts to make them, you know, walk down the corridor properly? Absolutely. But the chance was there. And I don't know. I just see this as a retreat. Now here's the promised but. And the but is, I get it. I understand. You know, we live in a time when social media and the cancel culture is so predominant that anybody person who makes a sincere decision is going to get trashed. And Ted, I'm sure not only would, if you went one direction or the other, you would be trashed on social media. You would be trashed, I'm sure, at least you'd receive complaints from some of your administrators and staff. I get it. I understand. You know, as you mentioned, no matter what decision you made, there was no right decision. And it's definitely a tough position to be in. I'm not sure what I would have done, and I can't tell you what's right and wrong. Ultimately, I know you're doing what's best, what you think is best for the school system. All I know is that I'm reporting to my first class at 9 a.m. on Monday morning. I've been tested for COVID 2 times already, and I'm going to be tested every single day I'm on campus. And I can't wait, because on Monday, I'm going to go back to class. I'm going to have students in front of me, and I'm going to get to do what I've been doing for the last 25 years, actual teaching. And if anyone's curious, first class, I'm talking about ancient Greek civilization, second, Christopher Columbus, and third, Napoleon. For me, it gets no better than that. So I wish you luck. I wish you all success. I hope that after the hybrid model goes into action, you see positive trends and that you can get those kids back in front of their teachers where they belong. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Jonathan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Paul and Ted, for joining us today. First of all, Ted, I'd really like to acknowledge your leadership. You know, to be able to pivot like you did, you know, as Jesse said, and just shows real leadership to me that you're willing to look at all the things and change your mind and do what you think is right and follow through that and take the arrows that come along with that. I think one of the biggest challenges for me, because I do have kids in the school system, and as we went to both the elementary and the high school, you know, information sessions, it was very clear to me that it was unworkable. My wife and I were really committed to sending our kids in to school in the hybrid model. But as we both read the DESE guidelines and listened to how the school was going to approach it, we very quickly realized that we were kind of conflicted because, to your point, these guidelines made school to me where it would just be full of distractions. And I also think too that the minute a kid gets sick or a child gets sick, everybody's going to panic. You know, and I think that's going back to what Jesse was saying, and that I think as a culture right now, we're very panicked and spooked about this, and we're not really thinking from my perspective, we're not thinking really straight around a lot of the decisions we're making around COVID. And I don't really think it's going to be metrics that they're going to tell us when we can go back to school remote. I think it's going to be when we as a culture can like calm down and just not panic every time a kid gets sniffles. You know, and to me, the inconsistency with what DESE was saying and what the state health department was saying really annoyed me. And the fact that I can go to a restaurant and sit down and take off my mask, but then my kid has to sit 6 feet away, social distance, with a mask on all day long. And again, I don't have any problem with masks or the uses of them, but I do have a problem with long-term use all day long. As a parent, I'm concerned about what that does to your immune system and also the distractions that creates. I know I'm fiddling with mine all the time. And also too, it's just very hard to see the teacher's face. And to me, it just doesn't make sense for long-term use, and having little breaks here and there is not going to be enough. So I think there's got to be consistency with, you know, with the guidelines. And I think, again, the point that was made, that guidelines are guidelines. And I think at this point in time, I think we need to kind of do what's right for Sutton. And I think we need to really work with our local health officials and come up with our own guidelines of how we're going to deal with this going forward. Part of my thinking is that, you know, by making this pivot, it gives us, you know, time to build out a hybrid model that I feel is workable. Because part of what I was concerned about with the hybrid model that's current is that my kids would only get 2 days of instruction, and then they'd have 3 days where they'd have some guidance, but they wouldn't necessarily be in class. And that's a real concern for me. And so what I think we should be doing is, in parallel with the remote model, we should be building out a more equitable model for, for the hybrid model, so that they're getting instruction 4.5, 5 days a week. And then if parents don't want to take the risk of sending their kids into school, that they're not missing out on a quality education. And then the kids parents do feel it's important for their kids to be in school, that they have the choice to get, a proper education in a hybrid model. So my feeling is that in parallel with this, and I think this was also mentioned at the school committee meeting the other night, we should be building out, I feel, a much more robust model, and then coming up with our own guidelines around using our own health officials to determine what's safe and what's not safe. Because I think there's many downward effects that I haven't heard anybody talking about. Number one is having, making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, and we have good, nobody's really talking about, we're only about having strong immune systems. Nobody's talking about the chemicals that we're using to clean that our kids are going to be exposed to. We've made the choice in our family to eliminate chemicals in our house a long time ago. These are all downward effects I'm hearing no one talk about, and I think they're going to have bigger effects than people realize. And so I think it's really important that we as a town come up with a model that's going to work for us, and build out a model so that if I, as a parent, I'm concerned about if my child comes home with COVID, that, and we have immune compromised people in the house, that I can keep my child home and, and get a good education, and my fellow, if I as a parent we don't have those type of issues in our house, we can send our children in. And so that's kind of the frame of mind that I'm thinking around this. And again, I'm just an opinion of a parent, but but as a leader, I just really want to commend you for, taking the leadership and working through. I think our only mistake is to wait for DESE guidelines to come along and then try to enact them. And it was just impossible to do. And I think that's what probably put us behind the 8 ball. Even if we are behind the 8 ball.
We are, districts like ours, and when I say that, the type of district we are, we're a small district, don't have a lot of additional supports. We don't have a lot of layers in our system. We're all in the same boat.
Yep.
I would just like to make a comment that you made about the biggest struggle I have with the hybrid model is what you brought out. What do we do and how do we support the students that are home 3 of the 5 days a week when the teachers are teaching the other kids in school? And I just picture a parent of a 5th grader, and they don't know an answer to a child's question, and they have to wait 2 or 3 hours to get an answer potentially. That's the missing link of our plan. Now, to fix that, we would have to hire more teachers. And so the state gave us a grant of $297,000. But in that grant, they say we have to spend that grant by December 30th, as if the school year ends on December 30th. And so they instead of allowing us to spend it over the whole year and look at this year as a unique situation, hire some teachers, they're hamstringing us with how we spend the money. And the other thing that I want to mention here, I was hired in 2010. In 2009, the Chapter 70 numbers in 2009, we still have not gotten that amount of money from the state. This past school year and this current school year, what they're projecting, we still are less funded from the state than we were in 2009. Jim and I, you live to learn in a conservative budget approach. And because of that, we've been able to build up our reserves. Jim has built up, and you guys have built up the town reserves, and we're in good shape financially. But I can't just worry about next year. And that's what I'm trying to do. I want to make sure that we don't we've got to think about not only 2020 and 21, but 22, 23, and 24. And so it's a delicate balance. But again, I think once we get an idea of, where the savings are going to be with transportation and those things, and we look at, as you say, look at the hybrid model and some of the feedback we've received, maybe we look to town and say, what, if we hired a couple of more elementary teachers, we will be able to provide additional supports in those days. So those are some of the things that we'll be looking at over the next month.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification, and I agree. I think there's so much complexity that I think unless you're in the middle of it, people don't necessarily understand. And I think a lot of the towns who are deciding to go hybrid model will very quickly be coming out of hybrid model into full remote, because like you said, once a child gets sick, whether it's the sniffles or cold or COVID, people are going to, and they start seeing those messages come across, because every child's going to be scrutinized. It's just going to become unworkable, and those schools will be out of it as well. And there'll be a disruption to their learning. So I'd rather start the way we're starting, with getting the kids acclimated with their teachers, going full remote until we can come up with a model, a hybrid model that gives them the full support through the 5 days a week. And then figuring out how do we safely have school that's reasonable and not completely locked down into a prison, and creating a lot of distraction around that. And so that, and again, that's not going to be about data, because the data shows right now we could go back full time. I mean, or at least in a hybrid model. So it's not going to be about data. It's going to be about people's tolerance for wanting to have their kids in school. And if somebody gets sick, how they're going to react to that. And that's what that really comes down to. So I think that's just, my point of view as a parent, and kind of listening to all the data. And I said, as my own perspective, we were really committed to hybrid, but when we heard the kind of the constraints around it, it really just felt unworkable. And so we were leaning at that point towards, towards a remote, model. And I think you made the decision very easy for us in that. But again, we're still committed to wanting our kids to go back to a hybrid model. I just would like to see, us kind of work on that a little bit further. So I just have two questions. I've been more making statements here, but I think the two questions I have are, this is obviously a massive change in teaching style for a lot of teachers. And it's not just about technology. It's also about, teaching in a remote model is a whole different set of skill sets. And one of my concerns is, because, I do this in my company, I do a lot of training, and we had to completely shift to, remote type learning. And for some people, that's a very difficult transition to that type of teaching, and may not even be that fulfilling for some folks. How are we going to identify and support those teachers who are really potentially struggling with a transition to this type of teaching?
Oh, I mentioned that earlier, and that is a concern of mine. You could have a teacher in a regular classroom, and they're just so dynamic, and they're going to struggle in this model. And so my direction to all the principals have been very clear that we need to look at all of our staff, and we need to make sure that we help those teachers that need the most help. So it's going to be principals going in, talking to the teaching staff and saying, listen, you need to let us know what support you need. When I look at the work that's happening within the grade levels, I'll give you one example. Second grade, what they've done, it's just one example, and it's happening in a number of grade levels. Each teacher is taking a subject area, and so they will videotape themselves and do a lesson that they give all the students in second grade. And then each teacher then will have their own class, and they'll support the kids in that way. When they meet every Wednesday morning, that's going to be such a crucial part of our plan, that teachers come together in their teams and they assess what's working, what's not working. And teachers have to, and sometimes we're afraid of this, saying, I'm not comfortable doing what I'm doing. They're going to have to speak up and say, I need some help here. And then it's our job to find them that help. Part of the grant that we're writing is going to bring in some type of technology assistance to help teachers specifically with teaching using remote tools, not not the person responsible for making our server working to full efficiency, and not someone fixing Chromebooks, but someone who has a background in education and can support our classroom teachers. We also have a lot of expertise right in our own buildings, and we're going to utilize those staff to work with those teachers that struggle. But again, think about teaching in elementary school. You're going to be Zooming, there are going to be parents there, they're going to be listening. That creates a different dynamic than being in a regular classroom, no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. But I think something that struck me that you said during the last school committee meeting is that, we've been teaching in this 18th century or 19th century model or early 20th century model that, really doesn't work in today's world. And so more philosophically, I know we're really in the tactics of just trying to get kids back to school right now, but I think this is also an opportunity for us to take some time to, when we kind of get past just trying to get everything up and running, to step back and say, how can we evolve school so that it better meets the needs of our students today? And so that really struck me, and it's just something that I'm passionate about and been frustrated with as well. And so I do think that these moments in time are moments for us to step back and say, and maybe it's just going to be incremental as we learn our way through it, but I do think this is a huge opportunity for us to start to move the needle on this a little bit, that we've been stuck. And I think it's not going to happen at the state level. It's going to happen in each school district, and we're going to have to figure that out. My final question is around the Chromebooks. So the fact that we're not going to be able to get all the students Chromebooks by September kind of leaves some kids, and I know you have some extras that they can borrow, but I still think, my question is, are we going to have enough for kids to start off school? Like, I went out and bought my kids a couple Chromebooks because I knew that they were going to need them. And because they're not going to have them for day one. And if there's another child that needs a Chromebook, I don't want to take that Chromebook, but I think part of the problem with us, because of the delay, the challenges of getting Chromebooks right now, it's kind of put in a situation where kids could be starting school without Chromebooks or having, I don't know. I just was kind of concerned about that, is that some parents are probably running out to buy Chromebooks right now because they're concerned their kids won't have them for day one. So.
Sure. In the springtime, we were able to cover, and we still had Chromebooks left in the building. What's going to be different in the fall is that if you have multiple children in your home, and if you're a parent and you're working from home, let's say you have 2 children and you need to have 3 different devices to access school. So I think there will be more of a demand. But we may even go as far as taking PCs out of computer labs. But we will, I've had parents reach out to me. If families are in need, they will assist in getting Chromebooks. So again, in our surveys that went out yesterday, the consensus is this is not going to be as big a problem as one might think. But again, we'll see how it goes. But at this point in time, I think most families have the technology. And I think with 400 additional Chromebooks, we also have another 80 laptops that we had in our library in the middle and high school that we can give out. So we have nearly 500 devices that people can borrow. So I think overall, I think we're going to be okay.
And maybe in the end, we don't need as many Chromebooks because we have, parents have bought them for their kids. Who it's probably worth understanding in the survey how many kids will need Chromebooks. So maybe we don't need to buy one for every student because, so it's just something to think about. It's more of an on my mind.
I did just text Dan Durgan and let him know that we can order 998 Chromebooks because you did purchase 2. So I thank you for that.
2 down for you right there. All right. Well, that's all I have. I don't want to monopolize time, but I just really appreciate you coming here today and just sharing what's going on and you continued communication that you've been doing. And I know it's challenging, so I appreciate everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jeffrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ted and Paul, thank you both for coming in tonight. I think it's very important that you did. I think, I watched both school committee meetings, like probably a good part of town did. And, I think just this setting after decisions been made is a little bit easier to kind of go through and understand everything. Ted, I got to tell you, I don't envy you in the job that you have. Paul, yours isn't so great either. But it's easy for us here, I think, in the cheap seats to sit here and kind of heckle. And I'm not speaking to my colleagues, I'm speaking about me personally. But it's a difficult decision. I think the alternatives that you had sounded like it was easy. I think when someone says, "Oh, let's just do hybrid," it sounds like it's an easy thing to do. But when you really get down to the nuts and bolts of it, like I know you did, and the teachers and administrators did, there were problems every which way. And I think I'm glad that you came to the decision you did ultimately. I think you got it right. And I'm glad there was a fairly spirited discussion at the school committee meeting the other night. And that's reflective in the 3-2 vote on going the full remote. I hope going forward, though, that the school committee will look at it as a 5-0 vote, really, and we're going to put all the efforts into doing what needs to be done to make that result the best that it can be, and that there's no going back and woulda, shoulda, coulda, and why didn't we do this? I think it's important for the students, the teachers, the administrators to move forward as one and try and get this right. I think there's probably going to be, it's a chaotic situation. I'm sure there's going to be a fair amount of chaos, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things that don't go as planned. And I'm hoping that just doesn't lead to people coming out with an "I told you so," and we should have done the hybrid or whatever, because there are no rules. I'm pretty sure, Ted, that you didn't have an awful lot of courses in how to be a superintendent during a pandemic. I'm not sure that was going to be a popular course for you. So it's all unknowns. And I just hope that people can kind of remember that and do what's best for the kids going forward now that the decision has been made. I think it's important to respect the process that you had, you went through, and the school committee went through. 2 meetings. I don't think there was anything left unsaid, certainly at the school committee meeting, and hopefully all the members took what each had to say into account when they made the decision. And I also think that the thought of a hybrid model versus a remote and so forth, it just sounds so good on paper. But I think the pictures that we see in the news every day of high schools around the country and what they look like, I'm not sure that they look a lot different than Sutton High School would look. And it's very easy to have these guidelines of, everyone's going to wear a mask at all times. Everyone's going to, never come within 5-6 feet of anyone else. I just don't see that happening. And I think you're right about that. And I think you're right about the first time that someone gets sick, what that's going to do to people's psyche about this. I think it's very easy with this because you see it on television a lot. And you don't have that. We don't necessarily all have a lot of personal experience with people being sick. And it's easy to minimize that risk because of that. I know personally, I know 5 people, I counted them, 5 people that I know that either have it or had it, ranging in age from 29 to 79. And from what I know about their experience, it's a real thing. And I don't think it's anything that we should be cavalier about and having the kids come back because kids aren't going to get it or they're not going to get it. It's a real thing. It causes real health problems to them, their families. So I think I think the safety first approach is right. I think it's, I think you came to the right decision on that. And, you know, just touching on what Jonathan said, because I did pick up on it too, Ted, in the meeting the other night, and I thought it was important when you said that, you know, there is a lot of downside to what's going on with these, with the remote plan versus the hybrid and getting kids back to school. But the opportunity I think that you have to improve how kids learn, using technology to maybe having some more robust offerings to kids, and improving the way teachers can communicate with kids. I think that's a very important point, and I hope that that you emphasize that going forward. I hope that the school committee members recognize that opportunity and really push for it. I know you got a lot on your plate now, but that, you know, hopefully you won't lose sight of that going forward as you go through this, because I think there is an opportunity to really increase the offerings to the students in this town. So I think that's basically it. You know, like I said, I don't want to be heckling from the cheap seats. I think the decision was made, and I think you go forward. And I think everyone hopefully will go forward and without an awful lot of second guessing. So, because I think the kids deserve that.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you both for being here tonight. I know you've had a long, I was going to say a long week and a half, but I think you've had a long 6 months. So thank you both for taking some extra time tonight. And I will steal a line from my colleague Jesse and say, I have some comments that will be followed up with a but. I have such empathy for the parents in this town. I'm fortunate enough that I no longer have a child in the school system, but you know, it's a huge burden. There's no question about it, whether we have a hybrid model, whether we have a remote model. I don't even know which one of those is more difficult for a parent. In work, out of work, not able to go to work at all. Our economy is in a difficult time. And so, you know, we have parents who can't make an income anymore, potentially. You know, and I'm scared about that. And I recognize this impact and the potential that it has to be, it could be a month, it could be a quarter, it could be the whole year. So I don't know how parents are going to deal with that. And when I say that there's a but, my but is safety has to be our first priority for all of our students. When I look at a school in Georgia that has 800 students quarantining because they went back, and the amount of illness that ran rampant through the school somehow took everybody by surprise. I don't ever want to see any students in this town or any other town be in that position. I know how difficult this is, and I don't know what the answer is for parents. And I truly empathize with them, but the safety has to be the critical issue. And, you know, just my 5 hours of school committee time last week is nothing. There are parents who were so invested in those meetings because they didn't know what was happening. Not to any fault of either of you, but there's so many rumors and concerns and comments out there. And I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I'm fortunate. I don't have a child in school anymore. My 2 employees don't have any children in school. So there's no direct impact on me, but there's a direct impact on thousands of people in this town. And so I don't know what the answer is, but I don't envy either of you, the position that you've been in. I don't know what the answer is any more than anybody else. Quite frankly, I probably know less than many. But I think that you've made the right decision for this community. And again, I say that not taking away from the parents who are really beside themselves. And I don't know what the answer to that is, but at the end of the day, I think healthy students, healthy teachers, healthy administrators, and healthy schools are the only answer that we can come by, at least for the time being. And I'm glad to hear you're both willing to revisit it as we go forward. But as I think, Jonathan had mentioned, one note goes home saying someone's ill. We're not going to see these kids in school anymore, and for good reason. So I think it makes sense to start out on a more conservative note and, reevaluate going forward if we can. So I really appreciate the work the entire school committee's done, vetting out these issues. Ted, bless your soul, your administrators, your health staff. It's a non-enviable position, but from my perspective, I think that at least for the time being, you made the right choice. So, those are my thoughts, and, thank you to both of you and Paul, to your committee. And just, I hope you can keep us apprised going forward of, whatever changes you feel are appropriate or that, you've made, just so that, there's additional information put out there to the public from this committee as well. So if you would be kind enough to do that going forward, I think we would all appreciate it. So those are my comments for what they're worth. Anybody else have any other questions, comments? Anything that's come up? No? I see Tim has moved rooms. He's moving around. I just want to thank you both for being here. I know I can't imagine the amount of sleep that you're getting, if any. So thanks for taking the extra time to, come and bring us up to speed on what's going on. And just thank you so much for your time, for both of you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks. Like you say,
Our
it's another
pleasure.
great venue to kind of communicate. So that's good news.
Yeah, thank you both so much. And just, please keep us apprised.
All right, I'm going to have dinner now, so see you all. Thank you again. Take care.
Take care, guys. All right, we will move on to our next item, which is item number 4, approval of the September election warrant. I suspect the best way to address it would be just a quick review from you, Jim, and then to read it into the record.
Yeah, sure, Madam Chair. This is the state primary warrant that will be posted at the locations that are advised in the warrant. We obviously have these warrants now that have gone out to voters for early voting, absentee ballots. We further in my update, I talk about how the state is requiring us to have early voting this coming weekend, actually, the 22nd and 23rd, a Saturday and a Sunday from 10 to 2. So the clerks are working nonstop, and they will be working that following week as well, because early voting will be required to go from the pre-COVID hours, which is 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and 9 a.m. to noon on Friday. So it's a challenge, but you have the warrant in front of you, and it does require the board signature.
Jim, is it necessary that we read it into the record?
Yeah, I don't know that the whole thing is required. This one's pretty easy because you just have a few positions that are available.
Okay.
I don't mind if Jonathan wants to read it into the record, the positions.
I know that we have previously, but I thought maybe I'd save Jonathan if it wasn't necessary.
Yeah, I can't tell you whether it's necessary or not, to be honest.
I don't recall reading it into the record of the past.
Well, see, now there's a voice of reason. So I guess we'll just take some comments or questions from the board before we vote on the matter. David.
Really, I have any comments. Every time this comes up, I say, what if I object?
Yeah.
But I don't, so I'm all set. Thank you.
Jesse.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Jim, I only have one question. Early
Sure.
voting, how is that going to be handled in town hall with it being under lock and key?
Well, it won't be under lock and key. I think Laura's plan is to go outside of town hall and have voting on the entrance to town hall, the top stair, which is obviously a little bit protected from the weather because it's undercover a bit, but Pam and or Laura will be out there handing individuals ballots and obviously accepting their ballot when complete. So, you know, the number of people that actually have requested ballots by mail be mailed to them is extensive. Laura came in maybe 2 weeks ago and showed me a stack of probably more than 2,000 forms that came in requesting ballots by mail. So I think, you know, the majority of people that are choosing not to go to the polls will have an option. And I very much doubt that Saturday and Sunday is going to be a big issue. I do think Monday through Friday, they'll have a handful, but it won't be overwhelming.
What about the possibility of using the old Sally Port, the old police station, garage bays? But that might provide a little more cover and
that is
stop
another
the flow
option.
in and out of town hall.
Right now, that's still under construction with the fire department locating in there, and I don't know the condition. I can look into that.
Okay, it was just a thought.
Yeah, no, it's a possibility. Right now, I think Laura's planning on doing the top of the stairs, and it's handicap accessible, et cetera. So.
All right, perfect. Other than that, I don't really have anything else. Other than, again, I'm curious to Dave's point.
I think, Jesse, you're breaking up a little, if you can hear me. Jesse's literally frozen. Jesse. Oh,
There he is.
we had some movement.
He's all set.
Yeah. I'm all set, thank you.
After all that wait.
Yeah.
Jonathan.
No, I have nothing. This is straightforward.
Okay, Jeffrey?
I'm good as well.
And I am all set, so I would happily entertain a motion on agenda item number 4.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the September 1st, 2020 state primary election warrant.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that item passes unanimously. Thank you so much. Next item on the agenda, item number 5, is a rent forbearance for Pucky Huddle Preschool. So Jim, if you want to address that for us, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was on our August 4th agenda. I did speak with the chairman of Pucky Huddle Preschool, I think August 3rd, and he was letting me know that he was reaching out to the town for some help. Pucky Huddle has closed their doors. They closed it in March when it was required by the state, the governor. And they have decided, the board has decided not to reopen in the fall. They want to go into January and see what the situation is, if it improves or something changes. But they did ask for some help. And I've talked to town council, and together we've created this rent forbearance, which essentially doesn't forgive the rent, just moves the rent to the end of the lease agreement. So from September through December, we won't receive a payment, which we typically receive a little over $1,000. I think it's $1,125 a month. But they have been outstanding tenants. It's a triple net lease where they assume all responsibility of the building and the outside of the building, et cetera. So there's been very little burden on the town, and they are outstanding tenants. And they've been a positive presence in the Manchog neighborhood, I would have to add. So I'm recommending the board authorizes me to sign this agreement, and I will forward it to Pucky Huddle.
Thank you so much, Jim. David.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So you answered the first question. They're obviously been paying their rent up till now timely.
Yeah, since we redid the lease a few years ago, and I think you have a copy of that lease in your packet. But
it is, yes.
But they have been on time or early every month that payment is due.
Okay, so I guess the second question for clarification purposes is, are we extending the length of the lease? Are we adding those months that they have additional to pay as additional term of the lease, or after the lease period ends, whether or not they stay as tenants, they then have some extending obligation beyond that period to pay us?
You know, I think it's going to extend the lease by 4 months right now. But I'd have to get clarification on that. It's a good question.
So, you know, I guess just if it really works that way, would that mean they basically have double rent payments during that period of time?
It's possible. It may just go to either a balloon payment at the end, or I would have to talk to town council about that and how this agreement was structured.
Yeah.
Because I believe that if they continue to lease the facility, then it may be double rent payments at the end of this lease.
So
if they are done, then it's probably a balloon payment.
All things being equal, I just want to be clear. I'm fine with a rent deferral. I think it's a great use of the building and all of that. But I guess the only other question I have is whether we considered amortizing the unpaid rent over the period of the remaining part of the lease and just increase their lease during that period of time.
We didn't, to look back, I really had one day to plan for this prior to the last meeting. And we came up with this rent forbearance. If the board doesn't feel comfortable with this situation, I can go back and renegotiate with Pucky Huddle and figure out an agreement, which would essentially increase their lease payment for the next small increase over the next however many years of lease is left.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to hear from the rest of the board. It's an option, I guess, is the way I thought about it. At the end of the day, it feels like a small risk at the end, but just sort of coordinating how it's going to work seemed like a question mark for me. So,
okay.
But again, the concept that you're going after to me makes sense, and I'm kind of fine with it. And honestly, if the rest of the board's good with this, I would be as well. So, thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you so much, David. Jesse?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I went back, because I was on the board when we signed this current agreement, and I went back and looked at my notes from that period. And at that time, there was nothing but positive comments that were made. And in hearing Jim's words, in terms of how they've been as a tenant over the last 5 years, again, I think they've done good by us. I think they've done good by Manchog, and ultimately they've done good by the kids that they support. So to Dave's point, I would think if it was me, I would rather have those missed payments added on to my monthly payments and stretched over the remainder of the term of the lease. But if they're more comfortable with that, either the balloon payment or the continuation of the lease from August, I guess it would take them through December or January 2025, 2026. Either way, I'm comfortable with it. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Jesse. Jonathan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think that's my only concern. I think obviously they're a really good tenant. I think this just adds a little bit of risk at the end, in the tune of, 4,000 and change that they'd have to come up with as a balloon payment. I don't know if that's a hardship for them or not. I mean, they agreed to the terms, but, if that's fine with them, let's leave it. But I do think maybe adding an option for them to spread this out across the rest of their payments just to make it a little bit smaller of an impact, or on the other hand, probably less likely, add it on and just increase the lease by 3 months. But it's just really about risk, and there may be very little risk, but that's my only concern. But I do think it makes absolute sense to, approve this forbearance.
Anything else, Jonathan?
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, Jeffrey?
Madam Chair, pretty much the same as has been said so far. I do think the way the document's written, it is a balloon payment at the end. I suspect, we'll probably revisit this sometime again, potentially, depending upon how things go and how the economic conditions go. I think we have to kind of expect that. There are options to extend the lease at the end. I think there's 2 options.
Yes.
So, at that point, I'm sure that this, assuming that everything starts again in January and goes through the end of this first term of the lease, I'm sure we will potentially revisit this at that point. So, but for what it is right now, where we are right now, I have no problem with it.
And there's a part of me that expects a phone call December 15th to talk about this again. So, just trying to be flexible with an extremely good tenant and a facility that is very difficult to rent out because it's the floors are separated, and without drilling through a concrete floor and putting some kind of stairwell in there, you got to have 2 different facilities within the one building. So it's a very difficult structure, and Puckey Huddle is a perfect situation where they have 2 separate classrooms.
Right, and they're I won't call them an institution in this town, but they're certainly well known in the town. They've been a good tenant, which is great. But I think everyone wants to see them succeed. So
yeah,
good with this.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Yeah, I don't want to repeat everything everyone said, but I do believe it is a balloon payment at the end.
Right.
But I'm not really at this point concerned about the financial impact, because I do suspect that, we will be revisiting this later this year. So if at that point in time, the balloon payment becomes too egregious for them, then we can talk about spreading it out over the term of the lease. But I do think, as proposed, that these changes make sense for the time being.
Great.
So if there's no further questions, we would entertain a motion on agenda item number 5.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to authorize Town Manager Jim Smith to sign assignment number 1 to lease agreement between the Town of Sutton, lessor, and Puckey Huddle Preschool, lessee.
Second that.
There's been a motion and a second. Everyone in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That item passes unanimously. Thank you so much, Jim. So as we move down our agenda, we are down to Jim's Town Manager's update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to go through this quickly. It is a little long, but first of all, we did get an APR, Agricultural Preservation Restriction request from the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources. I usually deal with an acronym, so it's MDAR. We get this request from. This one is interesting. It's from Glenn King and Sharon Kent, who obviously own King Farm, which is well known to everybody in town. They are looking to preserve that farm, the 204 acres that are involved with that area. This is really the first step in the process where it's announced at a public meeting, which is what we're doing tonight. Then it will go in the APR's hands, and they will have it appraised and review the whole facility. They will make offers to applicants over the late fall into the winter. And at that point, they may come to the town to be a co-holder of the APR, which we've done in the past. We did it with Keown Farms, Whittier Farms, which was 182 acres. So the town has done this in the past. King Farm is obviously an important site to this town. It goes back really to the beginning of this town. So I'm doing our part and presenting it at a public meeting, and we will hear more as the year goes further. CARES Act funding, I figured I'd give the board an update on the CARES Act money. We have been spending some of it. We did receive $842,000 in CARES federal grant money. Any technology purchase is 100% reimbursable through the CARES Act. When you get into PPE or plexiglass or anything that's not technology, then you have to apply to FEMA, which you're eligible for a 75% reimbursement, and then you apply to the CARES grant for the additional 25%. So it becomes a paperwork nightmare. Tim is the lead on the paperwork, and he's doing a great job, but it is frustrating and it is a challenge. So we have approved $105,000 for the school department to purchase Chromebooks. Ted has talked about that earlier in the meeting. We've got the department heads at the school department getting laptops. All the teachers now are getting laptops. We're using the capital money that was originally planned to go to the middle school, high school to purchase laptops for every teacher will now have a laptop to be able to teach remotely. We did agree to give roughly $25,000 to BVT, and they are purchasing technology, laptops as well for the students out there. So that left us with roughly $560,000 remaining, but I think Ted might have mentioned it earlier. We did go ahead and purchase one Chromebook per student, roughly 1,200 at roughly $270,000, $260,000. So we have roughly $300,000 remaining. So we are doing our best to make sure that the school department is ready to go remote. We thought it as a possibility. Now it's an actuality. So, that's the update on the CARES Act money. State aid, good news from the state, at least at this point in time. They have agreed to level fund state aid for 2021. And Ted mentioned this earlier, the school department did receive an additional, actually it's $334,000 for one-time money. But Ted also mentioned the restrictions on that money, that it needs to be spent by December, which makes it really difficult to hire anybody to help with the actual education. So we are filling out that budget and that grant, and hopefully I'll let you give an update to the board in the future. The challenge is now we look to FY22. The good news is that we level funded state aid in our budget, so we're good. Our budget is more than healthy. We actually set aside a number of dollars in reserve for FinCom to be able to quickly appropriate. At this point, it doesn't look like we will need those monies. But FY22, the state really needs to get out of this slowdown and get the economic engines churning so that state revenues come in and businesses are producing. So, it becomes a future challenge that we're going to keep a close eye on. But right now, we seem to be in good shape. Fall town meeting, at our goals meeting, as the board recalls, we had an extensive discussion about what we would like to see at fall town meeting. My understanding is the board was unanimous in making sure that the people were safe and that we didn't have anything controversial at fall town meeting. I have talked to the board members, and it appears that right now that we will be able to have one or two items, financial in nature, that will essentially realize the new growth, that additional new growth that we've received. We budgeted $150,000 in new growth. Right now, it looks like we may get an extra $150,000 to $200,000 in new growth. That's important for our long-term 5-year fiscal forecast. So we want to realize that money while we have the chance. So we are looking to really just focus on the financial items, and hopefully if the board is supportive of this, I will continue to push forward. It has been a challenge. I have been challenged by a number of departments and committees that really want to put their agendas on the town meeting. They were controversial at previous town meetings. They will probably be controversial at fall town meeting. And I think the worst case scenario is if you really want this and, you force it or it's forced on the warrant, but that obviously requires the board support, then what you may have is the people that are strongly interested in this show up for town meeting, and the average public person that says, I'm not going to go to that, it's too risky. And then you risk losing that item that you felt so passionate about because, you know, you thought it was important for the town. So anyway, I just wanted to get some further, you know, support and clarification on that issue. State grant for small bridge program. This is Matt Stencil applied for this grant at the state. He received a $100,000 grant for the bridge that goes underneath, what is that, Manchog Road, just before the fire station there at the Stevens Pond outlet that it goes underneath that road and on further down to eventually the Mumford River. So anyway, it's a process. It's similar in some ways to what happened at the Blackstone Street and, you know, the other dam that we repaired are working on right now. So just want to give you an update on that. Early voting, we talked about it a little bit. I think I've already gone through this. Laura has a plan. She feels comfortable with that plan. I just want to let the board know what that plan is. It's early voting Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 2 and pre-COVID hours from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and Friday from 9 to noon that following week. So August 24th through the 28th. Waters Farm has officially been canceled this year. They are looking forward to next year, sunny weather. But you know, they came to this conclusion as a board, and I appreciate their foresight. And we continue to work on the solar for the carport. One additional update I'd like to give the board is regarding Marion's Camp. We closed the gate for a bit of time for the chemical testing or chemical treatment that was done on Lake Singletary. That went smoothly. The gate is now reopened. I have instructed the police department to open the gate at, I think it's 6 o'clock in the morning and close it at 8 o'clock at night. That's for the next 2 weeks. My plan is to close the gate at the end of August and then have the porta potties removed by Chase Harris and kind of go back to the original schedule in September. We focus on school and leave the gate closed for a short period of time so people get used to not having access to the camp. So that's just a thought that I've instructed Tammy Mahoney and the Recreation Department to focus on. If the board has an issue with that, I'm willing to reconsider that. That's all I have for updates, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. David.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to try to go fast. You know, the APR is really special. I mean, for them to sort of move that property into an APR situation, that particular piece of property with its prominence in town, and that's a great thing. I really just can't give them enough appreciation for taking those steps. So thank you to them. CARES Act funding, I'm glad Tim's handling that. That feels like a paperwork nightmare. In fact, you know, every time we talk about it, I'm probably more confused instead of enlightened about all the various steps you have to go through to actually take advantage of that money. Good luck to Tim. I guess good news on the state aid. Fall town meeting, you know, I've had some discussions with some of the folks, and I guess I can't get away from the ideas that we expressed at our goals meeting. That, as you said, Jim, the idea that that people might reasonably decide not to attend the meeting just for safety reasons leaves open the possibility that other people that have a very specific agenda regarding one or another item sort of just gives, I don't know. You know, what we said the other day was that there's a lot of important items that we need to get before people, but we need to give people the opportunity to come and have good public discussion over that. And I think, you know, as we said, that having that meeting, I think limits the amount of public debate that could happen. So I remain in favor of a limited fall town meeting. Regarding the bridge, is it just repair work with that $100,000 that they're going to do on that bridge?
This is actually for the design. So it's usually, we go for the design, and that's roughly a 6-month period of time. And then there may be a construction grant that follows, which is typical of this type of grant. So I'm fully expecting a construction grant that we will apply for after we get the design.
That makes sense. $100,000 didn't seem like a lot of money to be able to deal with any kind of real bridge work.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to be at town hall today, and I tucked my head into the clerk's office. It is a busy place. They've got a lot going on. And, you know, I talked to Laura. Laura is, for anybody that doesn't know, Laura is just such a great example of what you'd want your town clerk to be. This is somebody who just cares about getting it right. And so a lot of the things that are happening in terms of the volume and the different things that we have to do right now are stressful because it's new and there is a lot of paperwork to handle. But she and Pam are both, you know, as you would expect, they're just going after it hard. And I'm sure, well, they were tired for sure. Kudos to them. The only thing about Waters Farm Days is, you know, it's going to be sunny that weekend. So, and Marion's Camp, you know, I'm fine with that. If that's the appropriate thing to do, let's do that. Hopefully it'll be a little bit cooler weather then, and the demand down there will be a little bit less anyway. Sounds like it's been a good summer in terms of use. I know it's been a little bit, you know, back and forth, but, you know, it's gotten a lot of use.
It has been a challenge. I won't say that it wasn't, but you know, in the end, it worked, and people got to use the water, especially during this very hot summer, as you mentioned. And you know, in the end, even, you know, support from the abutters and, you know, people that directly abut that camp have been patient and working with us. So I appreciate everybody.
Great. Well, thank you for the update. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Excuse me.
Thank you, David. Jesse.
Madam Chairwoman, I will similarly do my best to be quick. As for the APR, I am fully in support of this. Jim, to your point, you know, Hilltop Farm, as it now called, has been an operational farm going back to the foundation of, well, I think the 1700s. I did have paperwork on it, but my office is a mess trying to get it back in place. So hopefully next time it comes up, I'll have the exact date. But from a practical standpoint, think of the experiences that all of us have had food shopping during this pandemic. You know, and for me, it just reinforces my belief that, you know, local farms produce local food. You know where it comes from. I will be the first to admit, I buy my beef from Whittier Farm. I do a lot of my vegetable shopping up at Whittier's. Sometimes I go to Foppima's. The reason being is I want to know where my food comes from. And I think us as a community embracing these larger farms, doing whatever we can to make sure that they remain farms in perpetuity is vital, because we don't need more malls. And mall might be scenic up on that hill, but I would rather have fresh, locally produced produce, meat, whatever that's produced at that farm. So, you know, hopefully the town will be on board with this and be as supportive as hopefully our board will be. And I look forward to learning about the process. CARES Act, I appreciate Tim, but he's not there anymore. I'm sure it's not easy dealing with all the paperwork, but thank you to Tim and Jim and everyone else involved in doing all the filings. Good news about the state aid. Hopefully, you know, we'll be able to get a little more clarity, you know, once Beacon Hill finally wraps up the budget and starts looking forward to the future. But it's reassuring, Jim, to your point, and it goes to your conservative planning, knowing that at least for the next fiscal year, you know, we're at least on solid foundation.
Yeah.
I'm going to echo Dave's sentiment about fall town meeting. We don't have a Superdome in town where we can fit 1,000 people comfortably in a way that, again, will ease fears. To your point, if we had a limb hall, we may see, I've heard from some friends in other towns where they didn't know town meeting was occurring or were afraid and didn't show up. And measures were, and that created controversy. So I'm fully in favor of it, and I can see me pixelating. Hopefully it's not on my end, but see, teaching in an internet environment is a fun thing. So yeah, I'm good with the town hall. I'll go really quick. Bridge, great job, Matt Stencil. Just as an update, from what I know, the Depot Street Bridge, which is the other project, I think that's slated still for either 2024 or 2025 groundbreaking. So it'll be exciting, at least for my position on the CMMPO, to see where this one shows up, and I'll do all I can to herald it through. Early voting is early voting. We talked about that. Waters Farm Days. It's a shame. Great news for solar. And with the town beach, the only thing that I ask is we just kind of keep an eye on the weather. I mean, I agree with the idea of shutting it when school's upon us, but if we do have another heat wave before the kiddos are technically back, you know, it might create a little consternation. I'm not saying that I'm not appreciative of the neighbors and everyone who's been involved, appreciating all the individual citizens who spent a lot of hours making sure that the beach remains clean. But again, I just hate to say we're closing it August 31st and then September 1st, it's a heat wave. So that's my only thoughts on that. And other than that, before I start winging out again on the internet, I'll just say thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jesse. Jonathan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Jim, for your report. As far as the APR with the King Farm, I'm thrilled about that they've applied for this and are going through the process. It's really, there's very few ways for us to actually effectively preserve land in the state. This is really one of the only ways, and I think this is a really important asset for our town, not only just from just the beauty of it and keeping the character of the way the town looks, but also to Jesse's point that, you know, we need, I think COVID really highlighted the fragility in our centralized food system that we have, and having open space that we could support our farmers and maybe even support new farmers as they want to get into this business. I think we're going to need people, because I know that a lot of farmers are aging. And so I just believe that, you know, not putting every single piece of open land into malls or houses is a good idea, and it's something I've been concerned about for quite a while in town. You know, being that I grew up working on my neighbor's farm and watched a lot of the, you know, the farm is still intact, but a lot of the area fields around it that we leased are now all houses. I'm really happy to see that they're taking advantage of this program, and will, you know, get paid for the rights, you know, the cost, the development costs for it. So I think this is a great program. I fully support that.
Yeah.
As far as the CARES Act, you know, again, I'm happy that we're going after, you know, we're getting this money, and also the restrictions make it challenging. You know, I do think we probably don't need as many Chromebooks. I think a lot of parents have gone out and bought them. So I think, you know, I think it's something we need to look at there, instead of just buying every student one. We may want to see, it's probably too late at this point, but it just seems like with the delays that parents have probably bought them. I know people that I know have bought them as well. So, but I do think, you know, continuing to go after different funding sources to help us through this time, especially it'd be nice to get some funding around helping support this time and potentially supporting additional teachers for this period of time while we transition to this new model of whatever school is going to be in the future. As far as the fall town meeting, you know, this is a tough one. I think we got to err like we did. I think we made the right choice. I think it does stall some potential projects. And again, if some of these developers walk away, you know, there'll be others behind them, but there's some good potential projects that would bring revenue to the town. So there is a cost to this, but I do think that it's the right decision, because I think, you know, for the reasons that everybody has stated, also transparency, and also making people feel like we're not just trying to jam things in during this time. So I fully support kind of our stand on this, but it's with some trepidation in the fact that, you know, there are some really good legitimate projects, and I did have a conversation with Jen today, and, you know, it's going to create challenges for at least one of the projects anyway. And so I think we're, you know, it's just where we are. It's just the state of being. As far as the grant goes for the bridge, you know, I mean, for the, you know, for the dam, I think this is, you know, just another part of the process. Thanks, you know, Matt, for finding a funding source to help us, you know, get this fixed and get a study going on it. Let's see, you know, just nothing really to say around the early voting. It is what it is. I do appreciate all the work, because I think this year is going to be particularly challenging with all the different types of voting going on between, you know, early voting and it's just going to be higher numbers. So I think it's just, you know, I just really appreciate Laura and her team and the support that they're giving the town. Disappointed in Waters Farm Days, but I think there's just so many things that we're disappointed in this year that have been canceled that we're not going to be able to partake in. So it's just kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, I support the solar at the police station. I think it makes absolute sense, and, you know, I'm glad we're doing it. That's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Jeffrey?
Madam Chair. Thank you, Jim. I'm going to be pretty quick here. I'm going to, because I don't have an awful lot to add on some of these that hasn't already been said, but you know, I do want to say on the APR for the King property, I think that's, you know, I think that's great. I think it's an important thing to have happen. It's such an iconic property in town, and it really it makes the character of this town what it is. So I'm hoping that is successful. The fall town meeting, it's difficult. You know, my concern, and I think I mentioned it to you, Jim, that we have to do everything we can to have a spring town meeting like we always have had, whether that's indoors, outdoors, or whatever. I think it's important. I don't think we can delay beyond that. I also think that, you know, the words that you use to, you know, in terms of why we're doing it, they are trying to, because there are controversial issues. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think they're more consequential issues, and that it is important that people show up, and not just the people that are directly impacted by these, by the articles. So, you know, controversial means, you know, good and bad to me. Consequential means, you know, it's going to impact all of us. And so I think it's important that everyone has a chance to have a say in the matters of the town. So, so I do support that, and I recognize that there are issues with it, particularly with the planning articles. And then the last thing was on Marion's Camp. I'm okay with that. My thought though would be that, given that school is being pushed back a couple of weeks, does that do anything to the timing of when you go ahead and do this?
Yeah, I suppose it's possible. You know, the third week in August, this week, because the kids go back and we don't have any lifeguards down there.
Jim,
You know, I've extended it to the end of August because
you sound like Darth Vader. If you could just sort of go back, you are tuning in and out there.
Luke, I'm your phone. So I was just saying that, you know, we typically close Marion's Camp about the third week in August because of the students go back, the lifeguards go back to school, and we close the gate. But the gate's been open all summer long. And now we have the police open it early and close it at 8 o'clock. So trying to put some controls down there. And we don't want people down there at 11 o'clock at night partying down there. So that's not our intent. So I figured the end of August would be a good time to close it. Now, I appreciate if there's a heat wave and, maybe we will reconsider opening the gate and just, relaxing the rules. It's hard to have strict policies when you're going through this because, the students are not going back to college or back to school, and we don't have lifeguards down there this year.
That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Just a couple of quick points. I don't need to echo everybody's sentiment, but on the APR, I look forward to seeing how it rolls out going forward, and seeing what sort of offers roll in. And very, very excited about the project and thrilled that we can conserve that land. With regard to town meeting, absolutely, we will need a spring town meeting for sure. How that will look at this point, nobody knows. It could be inside, it could be outside. Hopefully we don't have a Waters Farms Day spring town meeting and it rains for outside. But, absolutely that will happen. There are some critical, so not consequential, not controversial, but critical matters that would have been on the fall town meeting that, I look forward to seeing how they roll out in the spring. Just unfortunately, it is what it is. And, I don't think we have a lot of options at this point. We have to keep everyone in town safe and healthy. And thank you so much to Laura and her staff. I can't even imagine the volume of work that's going through that office. So thank you so much to them and their diligence, and it does not go unnoticed. And Waters Farms Day, I'm gonna have to start making my own apple crisp, so sorry. But it's unfortunate it had to be canceled, but I think it was the right choice. So that's all the comments that I have on your update, Jim. Thank you. Next item on our agenda would be Selectmen's Roundtable or correspondence. If we could just see what everybody has to contribute to that. We'll start with you, David.
Thank you. All quick. I really don't have anything other than I'm curious what you're going to charge for the apple crisp.
Well, we'll talk about it.
I'm hungry like Jeff was. I'm also thinking.
Jesse.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I did not have a chance to talk to Michelle. Cleaning supplies.
Okay.
And we're locked again.
We heard you.
We heard cleaning supplies.
That's why I said it 3 times. All right, real quick. Second, the next time we convene, Lieutenant Dave Perry is going to be retired. So I would like just to thank him for his many years of service in town, because I truly believe he is one of a kind, and I think we'll miss him because he always casts a big shadow, literally and figuratively. I wish him all the best of luck in retirement. So Marion's camp is just make sure proper notification just goes out to the public, just to avoid any confusion, whatever you decide. And that's all I have before I lose connection again.
Thank you, Jesse. Jonathan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to echo what Jesse said. I just want to thank Lieutenant Perry for his service to the town as a police officer, and we'll never be able to replace him. And he's just an important figure for our town, and I'm really grateful for his service over the many years he was a police officer here. So just want to thank him.
Thank you so much. Jeffrey.
I am all set, Madam Chair.
Just 2 things. Again, happy retirement to Lieutenant Perry. I was hoping when we gave him an office large enough for him that he might stay, but that didn't work. Just one other item. We need at least 3 out of the 5 of us to stop by Town Hall as soon as we can to sign off on the common vic license and the state election warrant. So if anybody has an opportunity to stop by, the papers will be in the lobby of the town hall. And that's all I have for this evening.
Motion to adjourn.
Ah,
I'll second that.
all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Jesse, good luck at your meeting.
Oh, thank you.
Take care.
Good night
Good
now.
night.